Hi, friends. Join me as I talk to Sascha Crasnow of Puppy Parker Posey. We're going to talk a little bit of controversy, a lot about our respective button journeys, and what we have to look forward to in the future. Stay tuned.
Hello, Sascha. I am so excited to have you here to talk about your journey. Obviously, we've had many conversations over the years, and I am a huge fan of Parker, but I just want to set the record straight, get all the facts and details, and hear what this whole process has been like for you. So thank you for taking the time today to speak with me.
Yeah, of course. As you know, we're big fans of you and of Bunny and Ten and Otter, and so it's a delight to chat with you again.
Well, thanks. So I know that you know a lot about sort of my origin story and how I got started, but I'd be really interested in hearing from you what your origin story is with Parker. How did you get Parker? What was that relationship like in the beginning? Why did you start Buttons? Sort of any information that you think is relevant to building that story, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I had a dog before Parker named Asti, Asterix. And in January of 2021, he passed away. He was almost 17. And I knew I wanted to get another dog at some point. Part of me thought maybe I'll take a year where I don't have to think about planning for a dog when I'm traveling and things like that. And so I was like, maybe I'll take a year or so. It was my initial plan. And then it was living in the Midwest during winter during the pandemic. And I was like, oh, even my hospice care dog was holding up my mental health entirely. I would go out on walks to try and get out of the house, and I'd just see people walking their dogs and get really sad that I didn't have a dog to walk. Not that my dog was going on lots of walks in his old age, but still. So I missed having a dog very quickly. And instead of the year, in about a month, I started looking. I was looking at rescues, a bunch of different kind of places. And, again, it was pandemic. So a lot of people wanted dogs. And so it wasn't like I decided to get a dog, I get a dog the next day. So I was kind of keeping an eye on a bunch of things. I temporarily fostered a larger dog because I was like, maybe I want a big dog this time. Turns out I do not. I like small dogs. That was useful to know, and got the dog out of the shelter for a week. And so I was just looking. I had decided I really didn't want a puppy because I'd raised a puppy before, and I was like, it's a lot of work. I think I want a dog that's already house trained, maybe a little older, has calmed down from the puppy phase. So I was really looking for 1 to 3 year old smaller dogs. And then one evening, after maybe a glass or two of wine, I had with my family and was just scrolling through my Facebook feed, and a shelter in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is in Western Michigan, had posted that they had got this litter of puppies that came to them from Kentucky in kind of bad shape, but they were ready. They were rehabilitated and ready to be adopted. They were 11 weeks old. They'd had basically a lot of them had lost their fur and had skin irritation and stuff like that just from being abandoned for a bit. And the puppies, of course, puppies are cute. The puppies were cute, but one of them in particular had these ridiculous ears sticking out that were flopped over. And I looked at that puppy and I was like, that's my puppy. And I filled out a whole application immediately that evening and was about to submit it. And then I was like, Sascha, you don't want a puppy. You said you didn't. And I deleted it. I filled it out again. I deleted it, and then I was like, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And I filled it out and I submitted it. I was like, there's no way I'll be the first person or the person that they pick, whatever. And then I got a phone call the next morning and they said, you were the first application. You're a good application. Do you want to come pick up your puppy?
Oh my God. I thought I knew your origin story and I knew none of this. This is very fun to hear.
Yeah. So the next day I drove out to Kalamazoo. I was living in Ann Arbor at the time. It's an hour and a half drive. And so I drove out there and I picked her up. And her foster had brought her to the rescue. She'd been with a foster who I still talk to occasionally now, but she'd been brought in with her sister who was also being adopted. And so I walked up again. It was pandemic time, so I was waiting in the car. And so I walked up to go inside now that she had arrived. And she was like, oh, you're Sascha. Here's your puppy. She just threw up on her sister's head. I have to go give her a bath. And so with her pukey mouth, the first thing she did was nuzzle into my
Oh.
And so I walked in and the people at the place were like, "Oh, is that your puppy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, clearly she is." She just nuzzled her way in there and only detached from me so she could get microchipped before she left. And so I came home with a puppy. So that's how I got Parker. And then she just immediately started cracking me up like from day one. She's just such a little goofy girl. She would like, I have video of her from probably the first week I had her. She has this squeaker toy in her mouth and she's just incessantly squeaking. Just like happily. But I've always been a sucker for dogs with kind of floppy ears. I love like sighthound ears that stick out to the side. And so her ears are what got me. And then we started Buttons about 6 months in. And that has its own origin story.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm just obsessed. I'm like, oh, this is so sweet already. Oh my God. I'm going to apply for this puppy. No, tear it up. No. Okay, I'm going to apply again. And just, it's so perfect and so sweet. And then how she puked on her sister's head and then nuzzled into you.
She would consistently get car sick when she was younger. She still doesn't love the car, but now she just like begrudgingly accepts it. Like she'll hop in of her own accord and she likes the destination. She likes the places that we go.
She sings songs about them.
She sings songs when she arrives because she's so excited the car ride is over.
Yes, I have witnessed this firsthand. It's amazing. Number one chart topping hits. Yes. These songs.
It's when you're like, ah, yes, she is a Beagle mix.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I bet that's a question that a lot of people have. What is she?
Yeah,
She looks like so many creatures. What is? And she's so long.
She is.
Tell us about that.
Creatures. Yeah. So she is a Beagle mix. I did her embark for her DNA. And she is Beagle and American Spitz and Chihuahua. And then a bunch of other things. She's got a little bit of all of these are like under or like 10% or less, I think. But like she's got Cocker Spaniel, Blue Tick Coonhound, Collie, Mountain Cur, and then some Super Mutt at the end. Well, and I haven't been able to track down her brothers, but I have been able to see some of her sisters. Her brothers are the same color as she is, and her sisters are not.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen pictures of them when they're all puppies, but yeah, one of her sisters is black and like mostly black with some white and maybe a little bit of brown. And then the other one is like mostly white with brown, like speckled.
Fascinating.
So interesting, yeah. But so the other, I think Parker's on of her sisters, I think she's the biggest. But basically her sister, who we met a few years ago and got them together, basically is just like a scaled down version. It's also long, but just like a little smaller, so it doesn't look quite as extreme.
Aw.
But yeah, the length, yeah, she's got these long legs and long body, like potentially a mix of the small and the large breeds, potentially the Cocker Spaniel. Not entirely
Doesn't she have an extra vertebrae, maybe?
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay.
Yes. I've had some vets who have seen her who say, no, she has the right number of vertebrae. But I did have a friend who's a radiologist look at her x-ray once and say, she might have an extra vertebrae. So
that's wild.
It's quite long. She was definitely.
Yeah.
Running joke is that she has an extra vertebrae. Whether it's true or not is beside the point.
I will take it at face value.
Yeah.
I believe this to be true about her.
Yeah.
She deserves an extra vertebrae.
I think so. She's earned it.
Okay, so moving on to the origin story of Parker and Buttons. I was 6 months in that you started using them. I'd love to hear what led to that, what your communication was like before that, how you got started. All of those details would be amazing.
Yeah. After my last dog passed, my stepdad was like a very early TikTok adopter, and he started sending me bunny videos. And so he would just send me these bunny videos, and I was like, this looks cool. Sure, I'll try it sometime. Like I didn't really understand what I was seeing, really. It looks like a fun like thing to play around with. I didn't get really what was going on. But so I became familiar with it that way. And then I started doing kind of some research. And then so it was like on my mind of something I wanted to try. And then in, I think, spring of 2021, Christina Hunger's first book came out. And I read that, and there were some things in there that just like super just resonated with me. talking about, have you ever stared at your dog and wanted to know what they were thinking, especially having a dog that was basically in hospice care at the end of his life. That was like really hit home. And then also she tells a story about dog sitting for some of like her advisors, golden retrievers, and them having the bells to ring and ringing the bells when they had already been outside. And so it was like, oh, is this really like their only kind of direct form of communication? And that's why they're hitting it. And I noticed that Parker had bells, and I noticed that behavior in Parker. And so that was when I started realizing what I was actually seeing in your videos. And I was like, okay, wait, this is actually so much more than I gave it credit for. And so I read that book cover to cover, I think, on a flight to visit family. And when I landed, I ordered the buttons. And so we started on July 3rd, 2021. Very easy to remember since the day before the 4th of July. And yeah, and so like our communication beforehand, again, I'm an academic, and so like I'm a huge nerd, and I will nerd out on stuff immediately. So I was doing all of this research on what are best practices and what buttons are people starting with. And I found out about the research at UCSD and signed her up before I think we even had the buttons.
Yes,
You know, I
amazing.
was ready. And so I was like, okay, at this point, you know, we're still pandemic. So it was like going to take 2 weeks for the buttons to get to me or something like that. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to verbally model the words that I'm planning on putting down for the next 2 weeks. And that's what I did. And so I just was verbally modeling consistently. We had done like basic training. And like I said, we had the bells. So there were like some forms of communication, but she was also like major puppy energy. And so there were definitely like frustration behaviors that I did not love. Like she would tear my books off the shelves and tear them up when she was frustrated. And we were both frustrated and things like that. So giving her an outlet for where to put this energy or to tell me more specifically what she wanted, I was really excited about as well. So I just verbally modeled them for 2 weeks. I had like in my head, I was like, I'm going to start with 6 buttons. These are the 6 words I'm going to use. And that's what we did. And so when they arrived, I put them all down and I pressed them all. And then I walked into the other room to put the box away, and I heard all done from the other room. And it was Parker experimenting with one of her new buttons in a interestingly contextually appropriate way.
Yeah.
And within the first couple hours, she had experimented pressing with all of them, and I was responding to them when she was pressing them to reinforce them. And I have somewhere a screenshot that I sent to my family first day that we had the buttons, where I say, look, I don't want to say my dog is a genius, but she has pressed all of the buttons that I've given her so far already. But it's only been a few hours. And I like that looking back at that text now, because I'm like, she might be a little bit of a genius.
A little bit. Yeah. That's incredible. So how many buttons did you start with? What were your first words?
I started with 6. I started with outside, food, water, play, toy, and all done. And toy, I pretty quickly replaced with a toy specific one, because I realized very quickly that modeling toy and modeling play, there was no differentiation. So I switched it out for like squeaker and then added more different kinds of toys. And all done, again, I got lucky that it helps that I had 6, but I got lucky that Parker picked it up, and I'd been modeling verbally all done for a while, because I wouldn't recommend starting with that.
Yeah.
Parker, it's hard to like reinforce. So, I mean, it worked out for us, but yeah, definitely not something I would generally recommend. The rest of them I think were good, but
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting because we talk about what was your first breakthrough with your learner, and we think of like people at their boards in a very calculated manner, doing rapid modeling and doing some like experiential modeling, and then doing some paw targeting. And you just put down 6 buttons that you'd been using very conscientiously in context for a week or 2 before, and there was no breakthrough. It was like straight into communication, which is pretty cool. Did you have a moment where you were like, oh God, now what? What happens now? Or was it just, this feels natural, let's just build upon this and see? What was going on in your mind as that happened?
yeah, I was like surprised. When I put them down, I was planning to model them for a month with no expectations. And then after a month, I was like, then we'll try and see if we need to do something else to try and make this happen. So 30 seconds was not what I had anticipated.
Yeah.
It's funny because like when I talk to people and they're like, how do you teach the buttons, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I know in theory, but I actually didn't have to do much for Parker. That's atypical. It's just because she's a very curious dog, because I'm like, I'd be really curious to know what it is about her that lent itself to that. But yeah, like, I was surprised and excited. And yeah, I go all in on things really quickly. So I pretty much immediately, so first I realized that I was going to need to replace the toy button with toy specific buttons. And so I found someone on the like message boards who had some buttons that they were like trying to get rid of. And so I immediately bought a few more so that I could not just have that switch to one kind of toy, but so I could have a variety of different toys. And then I placed an order for more buttons and got like a huge kit. So that, yeah, so that I didn't want us to like stagnate. I was like, look, if she already knows all of these, let's use this. Let's keep going. Like she's really excited about it. Let's see what else we can do. So I think her board grew really fast at the beginning. I think by the end of 2 weeks, we had like over 20 buttons or something like that. And definitely grows at a much slower rate these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was excited. And again, maybe it's again the academic in me, but I was just excited. I was like, what is the potential of this? Like,
Totally.
where does it end? Let's see what else can happen. At the
Yeah.
beginning, really just making requests. And so then it was also about changing my mindset too, of being like, is this a request? Like understanding that actually they can talk about things and are interested in things beyond just kind of like want, 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 want. And so thinking about reading it within the context, reading it within her body language, reading it within all of these different things.
Did you, after you started seeing a little bit of success, did you have in your mind, okay, this is how she's going to use these buttons? Did you have an expectation of how she would use them, how you would progress? Did you have a sort of end goal in mind? I hear very much in you like the curiosity of an academic. Let's explore what is possible, which is also how I approached it. And I think that's so fun. But also, like, I did not know that one of the most powerful parts of this would be Buddy's ability to advocate for her own like physiological health. That was not in my conscious awareness at all until she started using them in that way. So I'm wondering if you had any sort of thought processes along the same lines. She's going to be able to tell me every single park she wants to go to or every single friend she wants to play with, and how your thoughts around that have changed over the years.
Yeah, definitely. I think from seeing like videos like yours with Bunny, where she's able to tell you when she has a foxtail in her paw and things like that, like those are things that I was like, ooh, wow, that's a really like powerful use case for this kind of communication. So giving her body parts was something that I definitely wanted to do. And she has used that to remind me about her medicine, to tell me she's not feeling well, things like that. So that's been really, really great. And then thinking expansively about that has been ways that I've rethought which ways we're going to go or which words we're going to add. She does a lot of dog sports and her muscles can get tight. And so I like thinking about maybe this isn't pain, but it feels like achiness, but maybe discomfort. She's asking for pets. Maybe what she really wants is massage. She's gotten massages before, so now she has a massage button. And so she will request that. And so that's a way for her to get some kind of like care specifically tied to other forms of comfort. Giving her like a scared and safe button. Also thinking about like she is a little bit of a scaredy cat sometimes, particularly around cats actually, but she can be fearful about some things. And so being able to talk about what is scaring her, to be able to ask if she's safe, for me to be able to tell her that she's safe. These are things that were later additions to think about, again, like advocating for well-being in a way that she can do so. And there's all sorts of interesting little places where this comes up. Recently this summer, I haven't added this button yet because it won't really be relevant until the weather warms up again. And we're about to head into Midwest winter. But towards the end of summer, throughout part of summer, I noticed she would come into my room and paw when I was in bed. And before bed, she'd like paw the wall or sniff at the blinds. And I was like, what is this about? You want something, but I don't know what. And it took me a while. Like, I really wasn't sure. And then 2 events happened in close proximity that sort of let me figure it out. And The first was we were playing Find It actually in this room. So it's like nose work. She has the essential oils, and I had hidden them up in an area and then also turned on the fan, A, because it was hot, and B, because I was like, oh, that'll make the scent move around. It'll be a little more challenging for her. And so she was looking around for it for a while, struggling to find it. She'd get close, but not find it. And then she went over to the table, which is not where the scent was, and started nose booping the remote that turns the fan on and off. And I said, do you want the fan off? And I turned it off, and then she immediately found the scent and
Oh my
I
God.
rewarded for it. So I was like, okay, a little clever girl.
Yeah.
Night, she comes into my room and she's doing the thing where she's pawing at the wall again. And I'm like, what's going on? I was like, what do you want? And she stood and she stared up at the fan, which was on. And so I gave her kind of a two-hand choice. I said, do you want the fan on or do you want the fan off? And I haven't done two-hand choice with her a ton. So at first I think she wasn't really sure what I was doing, but I gave her a decent amount of time. And I was actually about to change my approach when she nose booped the off button, or my hand for off. And I said, okay. And I turned it off and she leapt on the bed, wiggly. She was so excited. She was like thrilled that the fan was off, thrilled that I had understood her. And then she came in the next night and I gave her the same option. She immediately nose booped and then jumped on the bed because she was excited she was going to happen. I turned off the fan. And for most of summer, she was sleeping in the other room. And those nights she slept in the room with me. So she clearly
Wow.
something about the fan, at least like in the smaller rooms, doesn't seem to bother her as much in the bigger room, or maybe just at night when she like wants to be in a place and would prefer to be there than other places. But so ultimately I'll give her a fan button, which is
Yeah.
again her like comfort, both physical and emotional. And I plan to give her one when the weather warms up again.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. I feel like the interactions that are coming out of families that have the buttons that just like totally surprise me. Like, I don't know. I think going into this, I was like, okay, Bunny's going to ask to go to the park. She's going to ask to go to the beach. She's going to ask for food. She's going to ask for scritches, right? And it just blows everything I thought I knew about dogs out of the water. So I didn't go into this. I went into this process like, oh, what if this is interesting? But still with this sort of limited idea of what canine cognition could be. And very quickly, I was like, oh my God, she's teaching me so much. Now
Yeah.
I need to give her the ability to teach me everything else. So it very quickly turned from something that, when reflecting upon it, feels quite anthropocentric into something that feels very canine post-centric. That's not a word, but like
Yeah.
very much centers the learner versus I want my animal to speak to me in English because I'm a big dumb human and that's all I got. I can't understand them any other way. They just have the ability to teach us so much about how they experience the world. Just like that. Like, how would you ever possibly make the association without having this level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Very specific curiosity. Like I feel like people who have buttons for their learners develop this level of curiosity and active listening that goes above and beyond people that don't have buttons sometimes, even if you're a behavior consultant, because you have to, in order to figure out what words are salient to the individual, you have to be listening in such a different way that you're learning things all the time that wouldn't otherwise be accessible to us. Anyways, that's what I'm hearing when you say she wants the fan off. And I know this now, right? Just
Yeah,
like this.
totally. It is. It's listening to like body language that we don't understand as communication, right? Oh, you're doing this even though we're supposed to be doing this other thing. There's a reason for that. You're not just doing it like to be annoying or because, you know, you got distracted or whatever. There's a reason for this. Let's think about what that reason is. And I think, yeah, the curiosity thing is also interesting, especially at this stage when I know she has the ability to communicate about like her basic needs and a lot of these things. Some of the buttons that we've added are very much like an experiment. Like, what will she do with a laughter button? Like, no one can convince me that she does not have a sense of humor. She's funny.
Sorry.
And so seeing how she's used like a laughter button has been really interesting. And I didn't know how she'd use it. And yeah, so some of these more experimental ones are also just like not a presupposition of how it will be used, but just what if I
What
give
if?
this, yeah, as a means to articulate, and I model it in one way, which doesn't mean that's the way she's going to use it, but this is how I'm saying, this is how I understand this word. What will they then do with it? I think
Yeah.
that's interesting.
It's super interesting. Can you give us an example of how she's used the laughter button? I'd be really curious.
Oh, sure. Yeah. One of the ones that always sticks out in my mind, I guess there's two different ways I've seen her use it that I can think of specifically off the top of my head. And one of them was actually at Hot Doggy Summer, the year that like the huge group was there. So you were there too. And all of us were sitting around in Joelle's cabin in kind of the living room and talking and laughing. And so we all start laughing about something, who knows, at the same time. And Rad is actually over by Parker, and Parker walks over and hits the laughter button too. So is she laughing with us? Is she narrating our laughter? I'm not sure, but the recognition of what was happening was really interesting there.
That's so cool. It's so cool. Wow. Oh, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
She's also, we're playing together. Like she's used it as almost like an expression of I'm having fun.
Yeah.
So that's also been interesting too.
Oh, it's so cool. I love it. I love it. So how many words does Parker have now?
I think she has 131, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And does she have favorites or like most commonly used words or phrases?
They shift. So she went through a very long phase where poop was her favorite word.
Oh, yeah.
Very versatile word. She'd use it to when she needed to go poop, but when she wanted to go out and she thought I wasn't going to let her. And so it would motivate me more. And also as a curse word to express
Yeah.
it. Lately, I think Snufflemat and Box have been her most used. Snufflemat, I think in part because she eats most of her meals out of a Snufflemat. And she likes getting a topper on her food. And I've given her a topper button, but she has not used it. She just keeps pressing Snufflemat, and she'll sometimes press Snufflemat treat. I think she's whatever. This gets my point across. And I'll topper, and she's just like, no, it's fine.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's interesting that she's being like, I don't know if resistant is the right word, but she hasn't used it. And then Box, she really likes to shred. And so she'll ask for either a puzzle box or just a box to shred. She has a shred button too. But those seem to be the ones where I want my meal, but I want it in a more interesting way. Lately, the ones that she's pressed the most, I think.
Okay. What are some of your favorite word combinations that she's used repeatedly?
Yeah. Before she had a Snufflemat button, she was using food sweater repeatedly, and I had no idea what that meant. And so I posted it in my stories on her Instagram account and asked people, and a few people suggested Snufflemat. And so I gave her a Snufflemat button, and I gave her a Snufflemat when she pressed sweater food, and she switched over to using the Snufflemat button. So
That's so cool.
a really interesting combination because it was her making do with what she had.
Yeah.
And then once I figured out what that meant, she switched over. She uses come look a lot.
So pragmatic.
Yeah, come look. I'm trying to think of what other kind of combos she uses most consistently.
My favorite.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say one of my favorite stories from you, which I'd love for you to tell. I'll just remind you of it, is squeaker car.
Sure, yeah. She hasn't used that a ton, but yeah, that's her earliest iconic moment for sure.
And can you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, so this is maybe, I don't know, a few months, maybe 6 months into our button journey. It would have been, I think, yeah, like September of that year. So a few months in. And there was an ambulance parked outside of my neighbor's house. So on the street, and you could see it from my window. And Parker was staring out the window, watching this ambulance parked there. And she walked over to her buttons and pressed squeaker car and then looked at me. And I was like, that is a squeaker car. You are correct.
Oh, it's so wild. It's so smart.
That's definitely one of my favorites. Calling my computer a noise box. I liked that because I was on FaceTime with my family. She called a camera that was filming her once an iDevice.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah.
I love it, but that's creepy.
Yeah, and I'm always interested when she presses word, like she wants to know the word for something. I always find that really. She's asked people's names that way. She asked me for what yarn was called. She asked me what a plant was called. Yeah, she's very interested in the plants. Sometimes she presses the plant button more than I would think she would press the plant button.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Does she have a button?
Yes, she does. Yeah. And so
And
she'll
how
sometimes
does,
like word to ask a question.
yeah.
She'll sometimes press it. I think she has an I don't understand button, but it's on the opposite side of the board as the hum. But I think sometimes she'll
Mhm.
press it just as like a what's happening? I don't understand. Can you
Yeah, yeah.
clarify? But yeah, she'll use it to ask questions.
That's so interesting. Have you noticed any tendency towards using them at the beginning of a sentence? Like the Spanish, like
Yeah.
written grammar? So I think we're
Right.
seeing that in several learners.
Yeah. And I have actually not seen that in Parker.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've seen her press word. I've
Yeah.
rarely seen her start a sentence with that I can think
Yeah.
of. Yeah, and because I imagine all of us are modeling it in English grammar, and
Yeah.
or English speakers are modeling it
Right.
in English
Yeah.
grammar. And the fact that dogs are doing this other way is like a signal, hey, this is a question. I think is really interesting. I haven't noticed her doing that though, which is
That is really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. You showed me how to use it. So I'm just going to use it the way you showed me how to use it. Yeah. Let's see. Has there been any part of your journey with buttons specifically that you found particularly challenging or that Parker has found particularly challenging? I'd love to hear about that. I'd love to hear about that and what that looked like.
Yeah, I think there was a phase in her puppy phase when she was like getting close to a year, maybe 9 months or so, especially when I would be traveling and come back. But just in general, when she get like the late night zoomies where she would paw a button out and then just run around pressing it in her mouth. Uh,
Not
and that was not my favorite, especially because
ideal.
you would break it. And I'm like,
No.
these don't cost nothing. Like
These
are
aren't
not
free.
yeah. And also I'm like, now you don't have this word. And if I don't have the button to immediately replace it, then that's actually frustrating too, because then she's going to get frustrated that she doesn't have this word that she wants.
Yeah.
I think I have a video of her where she one night, like it's bedtime and she stole the poop button and is just running around chewing and pressing poop with her mouth repeatedly. It's very funny in hindsight. In the moment, I was like super annoyed.
Understandably.
Yeah, but otherwise, I don't know if there's been anything that has been frustrating per se. I think that anything that would be frustrating of me like struggling to figure out what word she wants or her being frustrated with my response, these are things that would exist. These are frustrations that would exist with or without the buttons. And if anything, they're less frequent or at least easier to negotiate because of them. And even like her running off with the buttons, like she would be running off with something. Like she ran off with my socks, she ran off with my hair things. Like this wasn't just the buttons that she did this to. So even that behavior is like it's puppy behavior, not really button related. So yeah, I don't know if there's been anything that I found frustrating. I really think that I have approached it as something that like I am doing because almost like I owe it to her. Like she is so much of her life is controlled by me, and so this is a way for her to get some control back. And that even when that's like inconvenient for me, it's like always inconvenient. Like she's living in a human world. A lot of her life is inconvenient for her. And so I'm not a perfect person, but I try and have empathy for that. And like, I know, shocking. And remind myself that was my mindset going into it. And that like, really, this is something that, I haven't given her a voice. I have given her a tool to express the voice she already had. And anytime if she's doing something that's frustrating, I've been with like friends or family that are like, do you ever take the buttons away? And I'm like, no. Yeah, it's frustrating, but this was a toddler. You wouldn't like tape their mouth shut or lock them in a room and be
Can
like,
you imagine? Oh my God.
yeah. Expressing herself like, yeah, she's annoying sometimes. I'm annoying sometimes. We're all annoying sometimes. It's like sometimes it's frustrating and sometimes we have to have a conversation about that. And sometimes I do something to try and help mediate her frustration, and sometimes she has to cope with her frustration, and because I have something I need to do or whatever, or I'm sick or who knows. We compromise sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I think that the things that are frustrating are just the things that are frustrating about living in a world with other sentient beings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Any roommate, you're not going to get along 100% of the time with any roommate, regardless of their species. The same is true for our dogs.
Yeah.
We just can't say yes all the time because we also are autonomous beings that have needs and desires. We do the best we can. And this is a tool for gaining more specificity around what we can do for each other to enable as much choice, agency, and control, just like you were saying, as possible. That being said, so I imagine that this has really positively impacted your relationship. I know in my situation, it's hard to say because we started so young that there isn't like a huge basis of comparison. Like we started the moment Bunny came home with the buttons. So it's just always been this sort of negotiation and give and take. But I can't imagine not having the buttons. I can't imagine her being able to advocate for herself in the same way without having had the buttons. Have you noticed anything similar with Parker, or do you have similar feelings about that? Or what are
Yeah.
your feelings about that, rather?
Yeah, I think I've said before, but like I any animal that like comes into my house will have at least the opportunity to use buttons from now on. I can't imagine a situation where I didn't do that. To my mind, it's an acknowledgement of their agency and themselves as like independent sentient beings, and a way to they give us so much joy, and that's why we have pets, that's why we have animals in our home. And so it feels like the least that I can do if I'm having a pet, because I want them to fulfill my life and I want to give them the best life, then this allows me to do that, and to give them an opportunity to have a say, I guess, in the way that our life goes together. Yeah.
I love that. Do you have thoughts about what words will come next? Do you have any goals in that regard with Parker looking forward, or?
Yeah, I always have a running list of a million words that inevitably when I'm adding words I don't look at because something else has come up and just
Totally.
seems more
Yeah.
pressing. A fan button definitely seems like something that I'll add when weather warms up. One thing I'm thinking about in relation to the fan, but also like she doesn't have an on off button right now in relation to like her sweater. Basically, if she's requests a sweater and she's wearing one, I take that to mean take it off, versus if she's not on. But that could be something that could maybe be useful, not just in sweater, but also with the fan, with the device, with a bunch of different things. So that's something that I've thought about. I definitely would like to keep adding body parts. And if there are other kind of related things that I think would be useful, I'd really like to. We go to a fear-free vet here, and they're really great. And I'd like to put together for her kind of a little travel board specifically for the vet. And so
That's so
introducing
cool.
the word vet or doctor. I might use doctor just because then I can use it for myself too. I
Yeah.
mean, vet for myself too, but whatever. Tell everyone doctor, right?
Yeah.
That feels fine. But yeah, so thinking about what words might be useful in that context and bringing that to try, and she does not love the vet, so to try and mediate that experience for her as well. Again, there are fear-free vets that they're great and do their best to make her as comfortable as they can while still treating what needs to be treated or checking what needs to be checked. And I think that could be an added component to that I would like to explore.
That's amazing. I love that idea. And I can't wait to see how that goes. If you're planning on sharing, please do. I would love to see.
Yes, I will.
Yes. So I'm sure that so many people are watching this and they're like, oh my God, I want a Parker. I want a bunny. I want my dog or cat to be able to communicate just like them. So with that in mind, what advice would you give to any human that is curious and eager to start doing this with their animal companion?
Do it.
Yeah.
That's my number one thing. Is I think people can like hem and haw about like when's the right time or what's the right words, and I have to have everything prepared for. Just do it. Just go ahead. You probably already, if you're someone interested in doing this, you're probably already talking to your dog or cat or whoever a lot. Be conscientious about the words that you're using. Start thinking about what are my learners' favorite words? What are the words that I think would be useful for us both to have? And start really conscientiously modeling them verbally. And that will set you up to be able to start with the buttons whenever they arrive. And yeah, I would just say, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good or whatever. Just go for it. There's as long as you're going into it with the intention of I'm interested in giving my learner a voice, there's no wrong first word choice. There's no, like, as long as you're thinking about how can I get my learner to communicate, you're fine. Just try. Just go.
Just do it.
there's a whole community of people who can support if you run into issues or if you're wanting questions answered as you're getting started. But I would say if you're curious about doing it and wondering what your learner would say or curious how it would play out in your household, just go for it.
I love that. Yeah, I think so much of the time we overthink things, right? Oh, dogs don't know words, or they can't know all the words, so we can only start with a few words. But what if? Like, what is the harm in exploring? We hold an apple up for a toddler enough times and say the word apple at the same time, and an association is built. It's not really that much more complicated than that when you really dive into it. So just get started. I love that. That's brilliant advice. Okay. This is my last question. What is your most controversial take on either canine behavior or buttons?
Ooh, my most controversial take. Maybe that they like should be mandatory.
I love it. I love it.
Like I understand like there's a socioeconomic component to this, whatever. But in an ideal world, these would be in every household. That's my take is that not every learner necessarily needs 100+ buttons, but that for every captive animal to have an opportunity to have more agency in through communication of this nature seems to me like it should be a given. And for people who are like, they're already talking, like, yes, they're already talking, but like evolutionarily, like they have evolved to be better at understanding us than we have of them. Like we're just not as good at it. And my understanding of Parker's body language, because there are general things about dogs and cats, but like also there are individuals, and so not everything is the same. The buttons have allowed me to understand her nonverbal communication so much better. I'm also like educating myself on these things all the time. I think that's really important too, is be an educated guardian to your animals and be one that knows they never know everything. Be constantly learning.
Yeah.
And so I think like my controversial take is that everyone should have buttons in their house. And and maybe also that nobody knows everything, right? And
Yes.
even what we think we know, we don't know whether we actually know those things or not. That's the academic in me. Like
I
that's
love this. Yeah. Yeah.
and be willing to have your mind changed and to have what you thought was certain not be. And that's learning from other humans, learning from humans who have different experiences, but also learning from our animals and learning from different animals. Yeah.
I love it. It's brilliant. And I completely agree. Sascha, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I can't wait to see where you and Parker go. You've already taught us all so much, and this has been an absolutely delightful conversation.
Thank you so much. It's always a joy talking to you.
Subscribe.